Hey everybody, this is Cameron from Obnoxious and Anonymous, and today we are doing a Twin Peaks Thought of the Day with a local resident to the Snoqualmie North Bend area, Mr. Bob Antone. And before we begin, I just have to tell you a funny story about how we met. It was this early spring of 2018. I was getting ready to go up to that area to uh, I guess scout locations, if you will. Basically, just kind of re-immerse myself into that world. It had been several years since I'd been there. I just kind of wanted to refamiliarize myself with that area, and also take in some of the season 3 locations, which I didn't know where any of those were. And several people in the Twin Peaks fan community had said, "Well, when you're up there, you gotta get together with Bob Antone. He is the guy. He's a local legend. You got to get together with him." So I said, "Fantastic." So I met a few people who knew him. They kind of put us in touch. I'm talking about you like you're not here, but so the second day I was there, we met for breakfast at Tweed's.
Mhm.
Basically, he was telling me about him growing up in the area, and I was telling him about my project. And we said, well, great. Well, this sounds fantastic. We'll get together tomorrow and talk more about stuff. And anyway, the next day came, and I reached out to Bob to make a time to meet up with him, and he very eloquently basically said that he wasn't interested in helping me find these areas anymore. And I was kind of speechless because I thought we had a really great breakfast. Um, and so I always just assumed that, like, God, I must have like made a terrible impression or something like that, and that you hated me, or because we didn't talk for, I don't know, 5.5 years,
Mhm. Mhm.
until I made a recent video basically calling out some of my detractors. And Bob came forward and said, "Wow, I didn't realize you were having some of the similar experiences that I've had in the past." And so we
Mhm.
just started talking. And I have to say that we've both learned a lot about each other in the last couple weeks, just because I just always
Yep.
assumed Bob hated me. And maybe he just assumed that I was one of the people that he didn't like in the fan community. But needless to say, we were both wrong. And so, Bob, it is fantastic to have you here. And I'm so thrilled to be talking to someone who has spent, your life in that area, which is an area we all envy and think is so beautiful.
Thank you so much for this platform today, and I would like to honor my grandfather. Today would have been his 118th birthday. He was born in 1905. Today would be his birthday. It is his birthday, and I want to honor him today. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, uh, before we get started, is there anything you want to add to my opening there?
No, I think you summed it up really good. So we'll get into that, later
Sure.
at a later time. But yeah, absolutely.
Well, well,
Ask away anything you would.
Well, basically, I just
Mhm.
wanted to suggest to people out there that sometimes the owls are not what they seem.
Very
Um,
good.
all right, so let's get started.
Okay.
So you were born in that area?
Yes, absolutely. I was born and raised North Bend. My family's been here about 100 years. So my grandfather came to this area in the 1920s. He ended up working at the mill that you see in Twin Peaks. He was a lumber grader, and his wife, my grandmother, she was a nurse at the hospital at the town of Snoqualmie Falls. So the site of the mill used to be a town. It is now considered a ghost town where Dirtfish is in the surrounding area. And they called that Snoqualmie Falls. And so my grandparents both worked there. And then my father was born on December 12th, 1940, at the Snoqualmie Falls Hospital.
Now, that area, it's my understanding that they're going to start to build again on that land. Is that the correct assumption?
Yes. And through the years, my whole childhood up until now, I've experienced the transition from, the old uh, culture, the town, the heritage, the people that used to live here, the timber industry, and the transition to what it is today. And I've seen so many changes over the years. And yes, they are planning to develop that area. I spoke with a developer. We spoke with a developer, and they're going to incorporate the smokestack that you see, in Twin Peaks, the remaining building there that you can see from Dirtfish, they're going to incorporate that into the new structure. And I guess there's going to be a museum. It will be commercial spaces. There will be places to process alcohol, and then like tasting rooms and pubs and restaurants. That's sort of the plan. There are 3 phases, from what I understand, what I've read. There are 3 phases. Phase number 1 is surrounding Dirtfish and the mill site. And then as phase 2 and 3 progress forward, that involves the mill pond. Now, the mill pond is very controversial because it is reported that as soon as folks start digging into that mill pond, toxins will be released into the water. Not good for the river, for the environment. There are things that are in that pond that are from industrial waste left over. And so the plan is to build an amphitheater. There's going to be live music there. They're planning to build an amphitheater, and it's a commercial venture basically. But that's basically the summary of what I understand. Their plans to develop that area. Yep.
Now, when I went up there and met you up in March of 2018, I actually was
Mhm.
staying at an Airbnb. I can't remember, but it was close to the Snoqualmie. It was just kind of a little over in the more newer development area,
Mhm.
and people in the area kept saying, "Oh, you know where you're staying right now? That's what we call Ghostwood." The Ghostwood Estates is that's basically what it is.
Mhm.
Um, so why don't you take us back a little bit before Twin Peaks was being filmed there? What
Mhm.
was it like? Your memories of the Snoqualmie North Bend area, as a kid, like, years before Twin Peaks was even a thing.
Oh yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So, growing up here, I was born in 1974, and North Bend and Snoqualmie, they were logging towns, and so everyone here had some kind of connection to the mill, Weyerhaeuser Mill, or, you know, anything in service to that, anything in service to the timber industry, and middle class, poor, working class people. There wasn't a lot of really wealthy people in the 70s and 80s.
I gotta tell you,
Now,
I'm looking at
mhm.
real estate up there. It's like $1 million homes now up there.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Absolutely. There are townhomes, there are structures being built in downtown North Bend that they start at $900,000 a piece for a
Wow.
townhome. And you're like, oh my God. And then you hear the mayor and you hear these city officials, and they're speaking in terms of, we need affordable housing, and they care for the environment. And it's so funny because a lot of the things that are said out loud, it's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
Shop local, it's actually the opposite. The environment, affordable housing, it's actually the opposite.
See,
Uh, I, I could go on and on.
it sounds like what's happening there is what's happening in my area, which is, all the little tech bros that work 2 hours north of me are all buying up the houses down where I am. Even though it's a 90-minute commute, it's like, well, we can come down here and get a house, because like up there, it's like, $2 million for a house, whereas here it's $1 million for a house, right? And it sounds like, to me, that a lot of the tech bros up in Seattle are trying to buy out the neighboring areas so they don't have to live in Seattle, but they can just commute to work. Because I can't see a lot of the locals in your area being able to just afford some of these houses.
No, not at all. And this brings me to a really good point. We were thinking about this earlier this morning. My wife and I were talking about it. Back in the old days, if Uncle Frank was unemployed and needed a place to live, you could scrap some lumber and you could build a little shack in your backyard, and Uncle Frank could live there until he got on his feet, right? And there were little cabins everywhere. That's my culture. There's little cabins, little houses, and all that. Well, starting in the 70s and 80s, King County, they started to come down real hard on the logging communities, and they had, there was a thing called the spotted owl. You've probably heard of the spotted owl controversy. And I remember at the peak of that controversy, 1989, and that's exactly the same year that Mark Frost and David Lynch came to town, was at the peak of this war between environmentalists and the timber community. And I remember there were signs in the window that said, "We support the timber industry." And there were families that showed their allegiance to loggers and logging families. And I remember that feeling, of it was just insecurity. Everything was just crumbling. Like everything I grew up with in the 80s felt like it was just evaporating, falling apart. And this was like 1989, early 90s. And, I stayed on through all of that. My dad uh, opened his first real estate office on the corner, kitty corner from Tweed's Cafe, the Martee, the Double R Diner. And he opened that business with Caroline Thompson. I'm very proud to say that name. And the Thompsons owned the first cafe there, the first incarnation of the cafe that everyone visits, the landmark, the international landmark. So his business partner was Caroline Thompson, and her husband was Cecil Thompson. And Roy Thompson was Cecil's father. And they were the folks that, basically created that icon that everybody understands. And so in 1989, okay, I had already seen Eraserhead, the movie, 2 years prior in 1987. So I'm sitting there, kitty corner, in 1989. I'm sitting there in my dad's office. Okay, I'm 15 years old, and I'm absolutely a David Lynch fan. Oh my God. I'm wearing an Eraserhead t-shirt. I'm sitting there with an Eraserhead t-shirt on that day. And I look across the street and my dad says, "Oh yeah, someone's filming a movie over there." You know what I mean? He didn't really talk like that. But anyway,
Right.
yeah. So I looked across the street and I see this, oh my God, this crew, and they're unloading lighting. And I see, oh my gosh. And it was so exciting. And I had no idea that it was my favorite director. I had no clue. And what was so strange about it is after seeing Eraserhead, I would walk through downtown North Bend and I looked at the buildings and I was like, I bet David Lynch would really like to film something here. This just feels like Eraserhead here. And I kind of had internalized, I had an epiphany when I saw Eraserhead, and I internalized that movie. I watched it 200 times. And I remember it scared the shit out of my mom because, you have the dead baby scene, and it's like, she's probably worried, like, oh, is my son disturbed? Is he going to become a serial killer or something? I don't know.
Now
But anyway,
you hadn't seen Blue Velvet yet.
I hadn't seen Blue Velvet, but I did see Blue Velvet shortly after that. Yeah,
Okay.
because the same person that showed, and it happened to be the owner of the North Bend Theater that shared Eraserhead and Blue Velvet, but Eraserhead was first.
Right.
And I remember I was just so blown away, and something inside of me moved spiritually. And as a young person,
Mhm.
it spoke to me on a deep level. And I remember I just couldn't put my finger on it, and I was just grasping at what just happened. So can you imagine being this young person and then looking across the street, seeing this film crew on the first day that they arrived to film the pilot episode? Oh my gosh. I remember the actor that played Bobby walking across the street, and he looked in the window, and he smiled at us, and he kind of like did this weird gesture and licked the glass, or acted like he was licking the glass. And I was like, "Who's that guy? Who is that guy?" And I remember laughing. And then when we saw the show, I was like, "Oh my God, that was Bobby." And I remember seeing him, like before he was even
Was he
known by anybody
was he
outside of
dressed
that.
already as the character?
Well, yeah, he was dressed as the character, and I think he was just kind of getting into his character. So he was, as
Well,
actors do.
he's asked to do a lot of bizarre animalistic things in that pilot, right?
Yeah,
He barks at one point.
sure.
He's doing the little dance on the car. So he's doing the little shuffle in the school. So
Yeah.
he's just kind of getting into character. But that's super exciting. I can't imagine just like I remember you telling me that story and just like unbelievable to be there seeing the first day of the pilot being shot directly across the street from you. Um just hold that thought for a second. I just want to get
Hmm.
back to since you were born in 74. I'm thinking about let's talk about 85, 86 in that area. I can imagine that area was like heaven to be a 10-year-old boy in a dirt bike.
Oh, oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, and you could just, summer times, and it wasn't overcrowded, like it is now. Like the mountain lakes, like Rattlesnake Lake, you could go up there and there'd be 3 or 4 other people, on a summer day sometimes. And the trails were not overcrowded. You could go on a nice hike. And my dad, worked for the Forest Service early in his life, and he helped build trail for the Pacific Crest Trail, and he was on the dynamite crew. He was a logging lead at Mountain Tree Farm. He did a lot of work in the woods, and so he took us out so many times in very remote areas, beautiful alpine lake wilderness areas, and exposed us to things. And there were not very many people around at that time. It wasn't like it is today. You go out on the trail and there are people acting like they're in a mall. They're walking around like they're in a mall, and they're talking loudly. They have music. We even had somebody with like a little boom box or something just blasting music, and you're like, what? We're out in the woods here. Like, why are you playing this music? Like, if you want to go to a mall, go to a mall. Like, hang out with your friends at a damn mall, but get the fuck out of the woods
I
here.
got
Come
that.
on.
I actually got that vibe over there by Snoqualmie Falls, that little hike that goes down by Snoqualmie Falls where you can go kind of
Oh yeah.
that where you just go downhill, then you come back
Mhm.
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
there were like 200 people on that trail, and
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. It's so interesting because after season 3, Olali Park is this big thing, right? It's like where
Mhm.
so many locations from seasons 1, 2, the movie, and season 3 were filmed, but it really wasn't until season 3 that Olali Park kind of became this big thing because of obviously Jack Rabbit's Palace and that kind of
Mhm.
thing. Um, what I mean, were you did you ever go down in that area prior to all that the filming as well?
Yeah, and so one of the memorable hikes with my dad was to Olali Lake, and
Mm,
so he took the family. I was maybe 6 years old at the time, 7. I was 7, and he took us to Olali Lake, and so we went way up to the origin of the water there, up high. It's kind of like toward the origin of the South Fork of the Snoqualmie. If you can start at Olali State Park, and then if you go a certain direction, you follow the watershed to the source of the South Fork of the Snoqualmie. So, I was familiar with the area. I remember we got lost in the woods as a child, and then there was a huge storm, and then my dad he brought a he brought a tarp with holes in it. He thought he got the nice tarp, but he got the tarp with holes in it. So when he tried to set up the tent, the shelter, there was water dripping. My sisters were crying and I was crying. We wanted to go home. And oh man. And then this is the funny part is we to get out, we kind of followed the sound of the freeway. We just walked down to the I-90. Okay.
mm.
And my dad used garbage bags for ponchos. So he just took a black garbage bag, cut holes in the side, and then I put my hands through it, and that was my poncho to keep me dry. And I remember I was embarrassed, and I, I didn't want anybody to see me in this poor man's poncho. But there's my
And
little story.
now you got to pay like $5 for one of those at the Jurassic Park ride at Universal Studios. They basically give you a trash bag to wear. So
Oh, is that right?
yeah,
Oh,
pretty much.
that's funny.
Um, so when you saw season 3,
Uh-huh.
we're gonna be jumping all around, folks. So just forgive me. When you saw season 3 and you saw Bobby talking about his dad, and they're walking through Olali Park, and they get to Jack Rabbit's Palace,
Yep.
you have to have some sort of kinship with this because Bobby talks about his dad and the woods in many ways the same way you talk about your dad and yourself in the woods. Like there seems to be you probably feel a real connection there.
I do. I feel very emotional about it. Yep.
So when you saw Jack Rabbit's Palace, was this a known kind of thing in Olali State Park that people kind of pointed to a lot, or is this just was this just a random broken down tree stump that David Lynch was scouting and said we'll use that?
Well, okay. I've said this in other interviews, but I'll repeat it again just for clarity. I believe that Mark Frost and David Lynch and the crew have special gifts, and I think those special gifts are borderline clairvoyance. So clairvoyance means to see past, present, or future remotely, that kind of thing. So yes, that location of Jackrabbit's Palace, that general area,
Mm-hmm.
is known and has been known for thousands of years. But even among, the settlers and the logging families and those folks, people know that location to be a place of strangeness. So this predates the TV show by many, many years.
Are you talking about the
And
whole Olali State Park? You're talking about just that area of the
I'm
park?
talking about, like, if you were at Jackrabbit's Palace,
Right.
let's just draw a circle around Jackrabbit's Palace, say a mile, circle of a mile around that, and
Okay.
just call that the center. If I were to start sharing stories in that circle, in that perimeter, you'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
because we're talking about Sasquatch sightings, we're talking about paranormal activity, we're talking about missing time, we're talking about missing people, we're talking about Gary Ridgway body dump site, we're talking about serial killers, not Gary Ridgway, who also dump bodies. And I
Wait,
was there.
you're talking about people have dumped bodies at Olali State Park?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And then the famous ones like the Green River Killer,
Really?
and yeah, and then there was a doctor
Jesus.
in Mercer Island who, during a sex act with his wife, they were into strangling or something. I don't know, whatever. S&M. Anyway, he strangled his wife and killed her accidentally while they were having sex. Anyway, he decided instead of calling the authorities, he would bring her body out and dump her body. And so that was, that was, I was there with my friend was part of search and rescue. Okay. And the reason I laugh is because he says, "Hey, do you want to see a body?" I know it sounds like Stephen King.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I guess. This was 1990, so Twin Peaks had just aired, I believe. It was summer of 1990. Yeah, so Twin Peaks was just on the air, right? I think I have my timeline right. Yeah, 1990. Anyway, we went up there, and he had been there earlier that day. There was a forensic glove on the end of a stick, which meant that they hadn't completed collecting evidence and that we should not be there. We shouldn't be there anyway. But anyway, uh, and so then we heard this man yelling from the road below, and we started taking off running. We're just kids at the time, whatever. I was 16. We're just young teens, and we just took off running, which was a bad decision. We got down to the logging road there, and there was a guy with a blue coat. It was an FBI dude, and he was running after us on foot. This is real. This is true. And we got into my friend's car, and he had just enough time to turn on the gas, push the pedal, and just spin out gravel, and shot that gravel at that FBI agent, and just dusted him. So he couldn't see our license plate, couldn't see us, and then we just ripped. We just took off down I-90. So that's a true story, and
Jeez.
that is Old Lolly State Park. That's the real stuff. That's the real stuff.
Well, because I shot one scene of my film at Olali State Park. We actually had to go back twice. And I have to say, I was super nervous to go there just because it's such a pivotal moment in my film.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say that when we got there and I mean, I had been to that area before, just kind of seen the location before. But when I got there to film both times, I have to say, all the nervousness went out the window the moment I reached that area, and I felt
Mm-hmm.
very protected. And we were there 5.5, maybe 6 hours, both times. And, not one person ever came by. It just felt like the universe wanted this scene to be filmed there
Mm-hmm.
and allowed us the time to do it both times. And then we were able to leave and move on with our lives. But um, it's very I've heard lots of people. I've heard you. I've heard Michael Horst talking about how there is such a spirituality of the land of that area, and
Yep.
you hear that, but it's one thing to hear it. It's another thing to actually feel like you've experienced it. And one of the things that I've talked with people who, have just seen the show and then they go up there, it's one thing to go like, oh, because I know a lot of people think it's like, basically touring the Universal backlot where it's like, it's like all these real locations and you can actually feel like you're in the show. But there's another context too. It's like, yeah, you can be there. You can look at the hotel on the falls and all that. You can be at a Lolly State Park, but it's a whole other thing to feel like you're there. And it's so immersive being in that area. And
Mhm.
there is an overwhelming power to being in that area that
Yeah.
I've never experienced anywhere else on this planet.
Yes. And to really clarify that, this place has been a sacred location, a destination for thousands of years. And I want to bring up the subject of Jerusalem. Now, just bear with me for a second. My
Okay.
sister just got back from Jerusalem. Now, when you go to Jerusalem, if you look at a map of Jerusalem, you have the Jewish quarter, you have the Christian, you have the Armenian, and then you have the Muslim. And all of those folks, actually, there's Baha'i too, Baha'i faith. All those folks go to that holy city and they all share a piece. It's all Abrahamic, it all comes from the same source. They're all linked, right? Now, this spot, this beautiful Snoqualmie Valley, is a sacred place, and it has been for thousands of years. And people have come here for healing. There is documentation of the indigenous people where they would travel for thousands of miles to come to this special place to be healed, to experience the power that comes from the land, the healing. So now today, where are we at? We're kind of like in, not completely, but there's a similarity to Jerusalem, and I'm going to explain it to you. Okay, so the Twin Peaks fan, okay, when they come to town, not saying all Twin Peaks fans, the Twin Peaks fan comes to town and they have a kinship with the show. There's this dimension of reality that they connect with, the characters, the storyline. They love it. They, just like I internalized Eraserhead. It's like, oh my God, they internalize the show. They come here, they go to these landmarks to experience the feeling of being in the show and being next to something that they love with all their heart, right? Okay, so now in the same land, there are people that are from old time families that have lived here for 100 years, 150 years, whatever, and they grew up with Uncle Jim talking about driving a log truck, through I-90, and they would have all these great memories at the diner on the corner there, and remember those good old days, and so when they come to town, this beautiful sacred place, they have no connection to Twin Peaks, but when they come here, they go to those same sites or the sites right next to it, and they're having their own religious experience connecting with their family history, and it's beautiful, but they have no connection. They've never seen an episode, but they can experience the same feeling. Okay, here's the third group, indigenous people. Now, Vi Hilbert was the last living speaker of Lashutseed, which is the northern dialect. And I remember she was at the North Bend Theater, the same place where Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me premiered. And in her storytelling, she talked about her parents bringing her to this very special place. And she knew she was in North Bend when she saw that beautiful mountain, Mount Si. And she said Mount Si was a spiritual being. And she said the falls, a spiritual place of healing. And for her, Twin Peaks, I don't know, she doesn't know what that is. But for her, this land is also a shared spiritual place. So all of these groups, and there's more than just these three groups, but
Mhm.
I'm trying to give you an analogy of that's what we have going on here. We have multiple people sharing the same sacred landscape and, coexisting.
It's
So
like they all come there for different reasons, and yet they all share the same experience.
just like Jerusalem, people come to the Holy Land and they all have a different culture and religion, but they share the same land in different ways. Yep.
That's really cool. So getting back to you're there, they're shooting the pilot the first day.
Yep.
Were you following the production at all I mean, I was a little hard in 1989, I'm sure, without the internet, but like, were you there for other days of shooting, or just that first day you were aware they were shooting something?
I was definitely there for other days of shooting. People back then, because it wasn't famous yet,
Right.
because it wasn't an international sensation, kids could ride their dirt bikes or they could walk up and just watch the filming. And
Right.
and David Lynch would talk to, kids and say, "Hey, how you doing, young man?" Or, he would talk to whoever. And the thing is in that pilot episode, if you look at the famous scene where, uh, you know, crying in the classroom, the announcement's been made,
Hmm.
and I believe is it Donna that's crying and she's holding her wrist? And do I have that right?
Yeah.
I think it's
Hmm.
Donna. Yeah. So the people all around her, guess what? Those are my classmates from middle school. I know those people. Those are people that I grew up with, and those are folks I can identify that were there. They were in the pilot, and they were residents of Snoqualmie Valley. So David Lynch, Mark Frost, they asked for extras, and a whole bunch of locals showed up, and those are the people that got the job. Now, one of those locals, Dustin Langen, he was there. Dustin Langen. He actually talked to David Lynch and made friends, and they went to the Marquee. This is back when they're filming the pilot, and my buddy, my best friend, is sitting there with my favorite director, and he's telling David Lynch about me, and he says, "Yeah, my best friend Bob." And then David Lynch, according to Dustin, he said, "Your friend's named Bob?" And he kind of reacted, because as you know, Bob is this prevalent like name in the show. I mean, it's a cultural bomb. You say the word Bob, and so he goes, "Yeah, he would really like your autograph." And so David Lynch took a napkin or a piece of paper or whatever, and he wrote something to me, and he said to Bob, something, something, something. I never got to see that piece of paper because my friend Dustin, he brought it home, and then his house flooded in Snoqualmie. So everything, all of his belongings got flooded. And he lived in the town of Snoqualmie next door. So I never got to have my autograph. And I
But
really,
at least you know it existed.
yes. And I just love that story. I just love that. So anyway.
So they shot the pilot. Now, in season one, we have a lot of exteriors of that area, and we know that
Mhm,
they didn't come back during season one to film other
mhm.
scenes. They primarily filmed in the LA area. Did, were you aware of like crews coming back and forth to grab, for grabbing extra footage, or was it just kind of like, once they left, they were gone until they came back to shoot Fire Walk with Me?
It seemed like, if I remember correctly, it seemed like they were here for a few months, 3 months off and on. I remember uh, that being the case. The whole thing about the mill fire, that's very interesting because there is footage of the aftermath of the Weyerhaeuser Mill fire,
Hmm.
and that was right around the time that they were there. As far as I understand, and I'm no expert on when the crews came and went. I am no expert on that. I just remember seeing them off and on, for
Right,
three
because
months,
when you
3 months.
because you see these different shots of tweeds, and it's apparent that they didn't all shoot it at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, um, now when they came back for Fire Walk with Me,
Hmm.
were you aware of them shooting in that area? Was the town at that time excited to have them back, or was the town um kind of like the way most of America was at that time, like, oh, this again?
Yeah, it was mixed. It was a mixed thing. I know that okay, so the very first time they came to film, it was probably more resistance because of the timber industry and because of the infighting. So the whole term, and don't take this personally because I know you're in California, but go back to California, god damn it. That kind of thing. Okay. So that was prevalent when they first came to town. But because it was such a sensation, by the time they came back for Fire Walk with Me, it seemed like about half the community was now supportive and excited. But the problem was Fire Walk with Me, and I was on the set there, Fire Walk with Me, on many of the scenes, which I can go into detail. Some of the famous scenes, I was standing there watching them be filmed, and because it was still kind of open, and it
Right.
was also before cell phones, so you couldn't, it wasn't like today.
Right. They didn't have
Today
to worry about that. They didn't have to worry about you live streaming it.
exactly. Yeah, today is a whole other mess. But yeah, the people were excited. By that time, there was such a sensation that there were larger crowds
Right.
surrounding the filming. There
Well,
were there,
now
Mhm.
people know what it is. When they're shooting the pilot, they don't
Yeah,
even know,
exactly.
what the
Yep.
subject is. All right, so since you brought it up, let's talk about some of these scenes you saw filmed.
Oh yeah, this is one of my favorite days. Okay, so you remember in Fire Walk with Me when Leland and Laura are riding in the car, and his hands are and his eyes are big, and then the one-armed man comes with his
Right.
truck and he's screaming and fucking yelling, and he shows the ring, I think, something like that.
Right.
And so we were standing on the corner watching this whole thing, and then he pulls into Moe's motor,
Right.
and then he's
Now for
just shaking like he's just having like a fucking
now,
nervous
now
breakdown.
for those of you who don't know, this actually was shot, I believe, in the same spot where the kid is hit by the car in season 3.
Correct,
Right.
correct. And they call it. Well, a lot of the fan community is starting to understand that spot is actually has a dark history,
Mm.
and that is native village site. There are graves, and they call that the Heartbreak Hotel. So when you're looking at the one-armed man and you see the brick building behind his back, that they call the Heartbreak Hotel, and that is one of the most haunted buildings in Snoqualmie. There have been so many deaths and strange, violent things that have happened in that building, that it has a reputation. And I could go on about that. One connection I do have to that building is my grandparents had their wedding reception downstairs when it used to be kind of a fancy motel. This was in 1937 when they had their wedding reception there. But yeah,
So it was an actual hotel.
yes.
Okay.
And the nickname among locals is the Heartbreak Hotel.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
So you saw the one-armed man scene. What was some of the other stuff you saw?
Okay, then so in Fat Trout Trailer Park, I was there when Chris Isaac and Agent Cooper were knocking on the door, investigating, and there's all that electrical sound, and the scene in Fire Walk with Me.
Right.
And then they go to that place where the trailer disappears, and so we were there for the filming of that. And I remember seeing Agent Cooper, I remember seeing Chris Isaac, I remember watching the
So they were
famous
there the
interview.
same. They were there. Oh yeah, they were there the same time because I saw an interview
Yep,
where they did a side by side. I wasn't
yep.
sure because Kyle
And I
was
was
barely part of the filming. So
we were there standing by when they were side by side with the green bridge in the background.
right.
I was just right off camera watching that, and that was really really cool day. So yeah, and I lived in number 3 in the real Meadowbrook Trailer Park. I mean, I ended up living in number 3, which you do see for a second in Fire Walk with Me. And it's when that woman comes out and she's muttering and she's holding something on her face or something like that.
Right.
And then it flashes to number 3. And I actually lived in number 3 with my son and my family at that time. Yep.
So and then Fire Walk with Me comes out or it premieres there, and then you've told the story before, but just since you're here, you were there for the premiere night, up watching the film through the projection booth, which is honestly a pretty exciting experience, I would think.
Yeah. So I got a job at the North Bend Movie Theater in 1987. That was my first job. When I started working there, I made $3.25 an hour, and I worked there all the way until 1992. And on the night of the premiere, I was asked to be there, one of 3 projectionists. And Harry Trostel, the owner, his wife Helen, they were the owners of the theater. Harry was the main projectionist. He didn't want anything to go wrong that night. He wanted it to be, flawless. And so at that time, we were using old projectors from 1940, 1941 actually. And during the movie, you have to watch for a cue in the corner, and then you switch from projector 1 to projector 2, and then you go
Mhm.
back from projector 2 to projector 1.
Right.
And you do that about 6 times,
Right.
right? And if you miss the cue, you can disrupt the film. And so he was worried. He was like, oh yeah. So I was standing by. I was there. There was another projections too. There was three of us, and I got to just relax and watch the movie. And I was just there just in case something went wrong. I would jump into the booth and help, fix it up real quick so we could get the movie back on. So, but
Right.
I got to see the whole movie.
All right.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you a couple questions about this.
Okay. Okay.
Did David Lynch give you guys specifics on how loud to play it?
Oh my gosh. It did seem louder than normal, but I cannot verify if he asked. I'd have to ask Helen that.
Because
Yeah.
both Wild at Heart and Mulholland Drive, he put out. I remember Projectionist getting a nice cordial. Hey, would you mind playing it at this decibel?
You know what? That's funny that you say that because I do remember the volume being extra loud that night, and I could ask Helen to verify that,
Right.
but I never remember that
I
detail. But
I
yeah,
yeah, I have suspicions that that would be correct because I
I bet
mean
it would be. Yeah.
he likes his films loud. Um, and when you say premiere, you're not talking about just like some local residents coming in. You're talking. I think you said something about David Bowie was there, and
Yeah.
David Lynch and all that. But David Bowie coming there—that's exciting.
Yeah, and I remember looking out of the window upstairs, and I looked out, and it was a red carpet affair, and limousines showing up, and just like in Hollywood. And I remember saying, "What the hell?" And then I looked up and I saw the mountain. I said, "Oh wait, I'm in North Bend. This is weird. Oh my god." Yeah, so all the stars were there. It was the grand American premiere. Yep.
And then did they have like the after party at Tweeds, or how did they? Do you know
I'm
where?
not sure where they had the after party. I don't
I mean, how
know.
convenient would that be, right? Just walk across the street.
That would be cool.
I've actually never seen a movie at North Bend Theater just because whenever I'm up there, I'm only up there for a few days or, a little less than a week. And I just want to take in all the stuff that I don't normally see because I can go to a movie theater anytime. But is that a pretty cool place to see a movie?
I think so. It's very charming, and some of the seats aren't very comfortable because there are some of the original seats. But that being said, it's just harkens back to our rural community. It has this charming, small town feel, and I know that they're going to keep it that way. They've talked very passionately, the new owners, about preserving this one screen theater. I mean, there's no other theaters like that around. This is like one of the last ones in King County, and so it's a very special place. Very special place. Yep.
And you were talking about how when they were shooting the pilot, there was a lot of back and forth between the spotted owl and the logging community.
Hmm.
Obviously, that was translated by Frost and Lynch into Save the Pine Weasel and all that. And
Hmm.
it's kind of cool because I think one of the reasons why, I mean, there are many reasons, but I think one of the reasons why the um, just the show itself, feels so lived in and real is it's not like they just wrote this little script and then went and filmed the scenes and then edited and just like put it out there like any other TV show. It feels like they allowed the environment around them to inform it so that even though it's the pilot and it's the first time you're seeing this world, much like when you first see the original Star Wars, it already feels real, lived in.
Hmm.
um it doesn't feel like the actors are like trying to find their character still. Everybody just seems like you just dropped into this reality and here's what's going on. And
Oh
so
yeah.
it just feels like it's just this completely realized world from
Mhm.
frame one. And that's why I think one of the reasons why people get that are fans of the show feel overwhelmed too is because you feel like you're not just going to this location. Like you can go to Los Angeles and see locations of this and that, and but when you go to certain areas in Snoqualmie, North Bend that were used, not only are you feeling the power of the land, but you feel like you're almost in the show because of the filming itself of the TV show. Kind of like somehow they harnessed uh the feeling of what it's like to be in some of these locations. So like when you go, it's like,
Yes.
wow, I'm really here. And that's something that Lynch can do better than a lot of filmmakers. Is like
Oh my God, yeah.
make you feel like he's able to harness whatever energy is around him and put it in that film.
Definitely, 100%. Yeah, and there are still a lot of old timers around that we've talked about parallels, between the show. I mentioned clairvoyance, past, present, future, remote viewing. One of my favorite subjects is characters in the show uh, connecting to real life situations, and I love those parallels. And there's so many of them, we could talk for hours about that. But yep.
All right, so Fire Walk with Me comes out.
Hmm.
It doesn't do very well. Um, First time I came to your area was in 2003. I was up there. I was going to Seattle with a girlfriend, and I said, "If I'm going here, I have to go. I'm right here. I have to go check this out." I was only there for a few hours. She's like, "I'm bored. Let's go."
Hmm.
Um, but one of the things that I was intrigued by was in 2003, there wasn't any mention of Twin Peaks in any of the shops, anywhere I
Hmm.
went, not even at the
Hmm.
Salish Lodge, nothing. It was like, that was a thing that came and went.
Yep.
1992 was over, it was done with, everyone moved on. So why don't you talk to me a little bit about what was it like in the area post Fire Walk with Me before season 3? So it's like, it's not coming back, it's over, it's done with. Was there sort of a return to normalcy, if you will, to the original air time before the show had come out? Or did you feel like there was sort of a Twin Peaks residue still there? I mean, I didn't feel it, but I was only there for a few hours. I mean, as someone who, continued to live there, did you feel like the Twin Peaks mania kind of went away for a while? Not counting, of course, the festivals and that kind of thing, but
Yeah, I would say that it went away. I would say that it was very low at that time. And then when, let's say, 2010, when smartphones, came into existence, I mean, it kind of changed everybody's world.
mhm.
Smartphones and more common usage of internet remotely and that kind of thing. New fans started to come, that had seen Twin Peaks and visiting the area and broadcasting, taking photos and posting them on social media. It started to kind of build a little bit. 2009, 2010, sort of, Facebook, MySpace, Facebook, and then it
And
just started to build.
you know
Yeah.
what happened just before then was that Twin Peaks dropped on Netflix.
Okay. Oh,
So
well, that helped me.
that coincides with it, because before it dropped on Netflix, Twin Peaks was, I've said it many times, like I think I've met 5 people in my entire life that had ever seen or heard of the show.
Mhm.
And then of course once it hit Netflix, it just opened the doors because everybody's streaming stuff on Netflix, right? So now a show that people hadn't seen ever, they weren't, because they weren't buying the VHS tapes in the '90s. All of a sudden, here it was in their living room, and they could
What
just.
year was that? What year was
Uh,
that?
I'm gonna say it's '06, '07, somewhere around that time,
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
right?
Well, that would make sense then, yeah.
Right, and then of course the gold box set came out, the big DVD box set. So it was all around that time. So
Mhm,
that makes sense. And then it was 2013 that the Blu-ray came out with the missing pieces. And then it was, I don't know, 6 months after that that they announced they were going to do season 3. Um,
mhm.
but yeah, I was just really interested in like that time between, like you talked about the smartphones and 92. It's like, you're dealing with 18 years of basically people just moving on with their life, because even
Mhm.
David Lynch was saying like Twin Peaks is as dead as a doornail. So
Yep.
yeah, because it just felt like there was this big wave of Twin Peaks that came into the area, and then after '92, it seemed like the wave kind of receded back. Because when I was there, it was
Mhm.
just people were like, "Oh yeah, wasn't yeah that show that was filmed here?" And I live in the Monterey Peninsula, where Clint Eastwood was our mayor when I was growing up, and
Oh, wow.
and there was a lot of film productions that were all around.
Mhm.
But people don't come around here and say, "Oh, is this was the Lost Boys was filmed? Is this where Dirty Harry was filmed? Is this where that kind of thing?"
Mhm.
So it's just kind of interesting to hear because like now it's almost like cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. The area
Mhm.
seems like it's quadrupling down on becoming the Twin Peaks Disneyland resort when it for 18 years pretended the show never even was filmed there.
Yes. 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 Yeah.
So can
And
you speak to what that's been like to see, something that that was popular and for a while in your area,
mhm.
then it went away and then it comes back and people are still interested. And then to see it turned around into basically a money merchandising area where it's like, people just come there to basically I don't know. It just seems like people are attracted to the area more for dollar signs now than they are for uh, respecting the area and observing the importance of not only the show but the Native Americans' heritage in the area as well.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that, and I have a perfect follow up. So the North Bend Film Festival was founded a few years back. It was around 2017, I believe, 2017, 2018. Now these folks were from all over the world, and many of them are Lynch fans. Okay, uh, New York, Los Angeles, even like France and Brazil, and just everywhere, right? And they decided to create a film festival once a year in the town of North Bend, where Twin Peaks was filmed,
Mhm.
and to showcase wonderful and strange movies that may or may not have any connection to David Lynch or Twin Peaks. Just wonderful experimental film, just crazy surrealism and just awesome stuff, right? And so every summer, and my wife and I would volunteer. We volunteered every year. We would help these folks because we thought it was a wonderful thing. We had our after parties here at the house. Um, we had um, we had all kinds of directors and actors and actresses and just wonderful creative people that would come for the after party. And then also down the street, they had a strange storytelling hour, and I got to be the storyteller. And I used to tell. They would honor me. These people from all over the world would honor my family and allow me to entertain and tell my stories, just like I'm talking to you right now. And it was part of the programming, and so this year is the first year that the North Bend Film Festival is not going to have their summer festival, and we're really bummed out. And talking to them, I don't want to say any names, but the programmers that I talked to said that the Chamber of Commerce just kind of turned a blind eye or just kind of gave them a cold shoulder, right? And they've been calling, they've been emailing, no response, no response, no help, no help, no help, no help. So then I saw, oh, the real Twin Peaks Fest. I was like, oh, I said,
So
that,
so there can't be both. It can only be one or the other.
well, it's quite an operation, and the chamber was supporting and nurturing the North Bend Film Festival. It costs, I think, about $20,000 cumulatively. Like people, you know, put their money together, about 20K to put on the festival every year. But there was a lot of people that were putting the money together, including local businesses and the chamber, and they were all working together. But we saw a transition. We're like, okay, I see. And we've had some experiences with those folks, and I felt really bad. And I'll tell you why. I just want to be very clear with you. The thing about the North Bend Film Festival that is so good for our area is it's bringing true diversity. It's bringing true creative folk from all over the world. I was able to meet, Hannah Levine. She was in the brand new cherry flavor. She hung out here and partied at our house. That's a wonderful series. She was here. I carved a trophy uh, for Danny Elfman's daughter, Molly Elfman, for her film. I think it's next exit or last exit, next exit. Yeah. And so this is the Elfman family. I mean, oh my God, there was all these connections that were so broad reaching. And then, obscure films from Brazil and, LGBTQ films from over here and people from New York and people from, just everywhere. And that's so good and healthy for our community, right? So now what are we back to? Okay, we're back to, so Twin Peaks Festival. I think it's great. The real Twin Peaks. We did attend. It's great. But when I look at the programming, when I look at that programming in comparison to the North Bend Film Festival, I look at this very narrow elite group. Okay. Do you understand where I'm going with this?
Oh yeah.
It's a very elite group. Now, is that good for our community? Is that good for the health of youth here and educating kids who may not be exposed to certain things? The North Bend Film Festival is bringing this beautiful culture, and then I see this very narrow focus, which I love Twin Peaks. So, come on. And I love the real Twin Peaks Fest. But there's a huge difference. And you are right. It seems to be like, hey, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Let's go over here and let's cash in and let's try to make as big as we can. Whereas
And
this
yet,
other thing,
yet at the same time, though,
yeah,
let's make it smaller than it's ever been too. Because you're not the real, I'm tired of this name, the real Twin Peaks. All right, that's just kind of a not TM, trademark kind of name. That to me is completely irrelevant and bogus, because it's that name is designed because of the whole, remember they were going to do that whole Twin Peaks thing at Graceland. So it's just kind of like, it's just kind of like poking the powers that be. This is the real Twin Peaks, and it's like,
yep,
all right, guys, calm down. But you would think that event, they would want to cast as wide of a net as possible and get all these different people, all these different artists, all these different individuals that have all come together in their own unique ways, as a way of keeping Twin Peaks alive. All they did was they allowed 1 to 2 people to basically figure out a way to get the town, the Chamber of Commerce included, to pay for a 3-day party weekend for about 15 friends, and then anybody else who wanted to come along. Because they really didn't have that great of an attendance. I mean, it was like under 100 people total, people coming in and out. And the only people speaking were, like you said, a small group of people that were all friends, that all know each other, that already know what each other's going to say. So basically, everyone's just kind of sitting there, just kind of nodding their head, like, yeah, check. Yeah, good. You said that. Good. Check.
exactly.
It's not like this awesome event festival where people come together and share different thoughts and ideas. I mean, it's just basically, it's I hate to say it, but it's a giant circle jerk. And it's been like that for a while, because some of these people are in control of the Facebook pages, the large Twitter accounts, the Instagram accounts. They have ties to the Chamber of Commerce. They've figured out a way so that they dominate the, I call them the Twin Peaks elites, just as as a joke, because they think that they dominate the space where you either have to kiss their butt or have them involved in some way, or whatever you're working on, or whatever your aspect of looking at the show is, whatever, will never be seen by the masses, because they will make sure it doesn't get shared on their pages. And that is disgusting and abysmal, and they really should be all ashamed of themselves.
They really should. They really should.
They're not, though. And I have it on good authority that there are a couple members in the Chamber of Commerce that covered up a number of their um, bad behavior. And that to
Mhm.
me, especially when the Chamber of Commerce writes on the Real Twin Peaks Days website, they accidentally instead of saying, these rules of conduct need to be applied during the festival or event, they wrote it has to be applied all year.
Yep.
And I can say that there's at least at least a handful
Mhm.
uh that never should have gained access to that event,
Yeah.
who never should have been involved in that event from day one in the planning or in the attendance of it. And they
Yep.
should have been turned down. And but the thing is though is that they knew if they had actually put their foot down and actually, adhered to their own rules of conduct, it would have blown up the entire event and festival, and half of those
Yep.
people would not even have been allowed to go. Now, here's the thing: maybe more people would have come in, but we'll never know. And that's why I feel like um, they feel like they've created this awesome new event, when in reality, they actually spat in the entire face of the Twin Peaks fan community by doing this event.
Well, and I want to clarify, there was one person on the panel, because not everybody in that group obviously is a bad apple. No. So there's one guy, Jason Matson. He was one of the prop experts on the panel. He is a great, great person, and he is the head of Lewis County Museum. And we know him. We're friends with him. We're going to be working with him soon. We volunteer and we work with the museum down in Chehalis. Great guy. So we can't, obviously you're not blanket stating everybody, because there are some really great people in that,
Oh, absolutely not.
group.
There are
Yeah.
people I know.
And even in the chamber, there are a few people that are great
Well,
in the
that's why
chamber
I said
too.
it
Yeah,
wasn't everybody. It was a few bad apples. But
absolutely.
that
Yep.
being
Yep.
said, there are people I know who went to that event who are not bad people at all. But I
Absolutely.
also
Yep.
know that if they were aware
Yep.
of some of the behaviors that were happening behind the scenes with a number of these people, I don't know if they would go.
Yep.
It's just that because certain people have been able to uh, dominate the space,
Yeah.
they don't allow for the negative aspects of their behavior to be seen by other people.
Sure.
And so they don't know. So some of the, like we said, there are obviously good people who went, but I also think that, some people will see a glass of water and drink it, but when you put up a
Mhm.
clean glass of water next to them, they might drink that more. Right?
Oh yeah.
It's just they don't know it's dirty.
No,
The water.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. There's no disagreeing at all. I absolutely agree with you. Yep.
Um, so let's just kind of move over a little bit.
Hmm.
So when I first heard about you, um, I had heard that there were around the time of season 3, uh, there was going to be a giant premiere party for the Snoqualmie North Bend area, and somehow there was some sort of friction that happened where Snoqualmie ended up doing one premiere party for season 3 and North Bend ended up doing their own premiere party of season 3. I heard that you were involved with the initial planning of it, and then when it splintered off, you took over one. Can you clarify what all that was about, or if that's just like
Oh,
not even what if is that even truthful what I heard?
yeah. Let me clarify. So I have a band called Tinkham Road, and we had a night scheduled at the Salal Grange, and it was just a night of community celebration. It really wasn't even a Twin Peaks anything, but I had invited. We wanted to include. Remember how I was talking about the different people that share the land,
Mhm.
and there are different cultural groups. We wanted to have all the cultural groups present. So we have the indigenous, we have the old logging families. This is my neighborhood. Salal Grange is right down the street. We also invited a representative from Twin Peaks. It was not Twin Peaks centered. It was a performance with storytelling that included neighborhood stories, history. Nothing. It was like nothing to do with Twin Peaks. that section, but there was going to be a 15-minute, 20-minute presentation of Twin Peaks material to honor that part of our culture. So you do have part of the story kind of right, but I wasn't on any committee at all that was planning any kind of Twin Peaks only event. That was not what I was doing. And it never was that. And then the person that I invited, they had something come up and they couldn't make it. Okay. That person couldn't make it because their son or daughter, their child was sick. And, my wife and I, we worked very, very hard. And I'm going to say this, we worked bloody fucking hard for years and years. And we always show up. Okay. In order to be a professional in this valley, in this town, you have to be a person of your word. You have to show up. When you are on the program and you're a professional and you advertise and sell tickets, you show up, you follow through. And my wife and I have always made sure every event that we've ever put on, we don't call in sick. We show up. We show up. And that's why we have the success we have today. So the person that I talked to, a little disappointed, never shared any harsh words or anything. But what I did say to this person was, we're very professional and we only work with people who follow through. Because, if someone's on the bill and they're going to come and do a presentation, even if they're just volunteering and then they bail, I understand. But we're saying, in the future, we're going to work with other people. This is what North Bend is. This is an old logging town. It's like, fuck, man, if you're going to go do something, you're going to do it. You're going to follow through. That's the culture I'm from.
If this person had contacted you like that morning or earlier in the day, would you still have that feeling, or was it just because it was 10 minutes before they were supposed to talk?
I think it was because it was 10 minutes before, and I just felt, I understand. And, honestly, I do have compassion and I get it. And I will take responsibility for making the decision of saying, hey, I'm not going to work with this person anymore. I will take the heat. I don't care. But this is my point of view. Like, professionalism is professionalism. And following.
No, I just want to play devil's advocate as,
right.
As someone who has a small kid.
Yeah.
Like, things do sometimes happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, yep.
But I also think that if your kid is typically sick like that, you would know earlier than 10 minutes before you were going to speak. That's all. And I mean, I wasn't there, I wasn't involved, but
maybe I made a mistake by being abrupt, but I was trying to explain kind of where my culture is from. This is my culture that I'm talking about. This is doing business in the Snoqualmie Valley. And so, maybe I made a mistake, maybe I didn't. But there are other things. There are other things we can talk about.
Yeah. Right, but there was this incident, though.
Yeah.
Appears to have had ramifications that would continue on. And I find it interesting that even though your event wasn't necessarily Twin Peaks related, somehow, the conveyor belt of Rumorville gets back to somebody who I don't even know you, and I'm up there visiting the area, and I'm hearing that, Bob Antone couldn't get along with this other person and just hijacked it and created his own Twin Peaks premiere party when that's not even what happened.
It wasn't even a premiere party. It was not. It was just a celebration of local history and culture and music. That's it.
Isn't that strange how things just
evolve
and change? It's almost like there's this web out there that is determined that when they decide that somebody is an enemy of them, they will make sure that everybody sides with them.
Yes. And I have another example, my friend. I have another example.
All right.
And it's time to call this person out, because this is, they should be ashamed. They should be ashamed. So on Instagram, there was a gentleman that was posting film sites, and I was really excited about the film sites, just like I'm excited right now. And, like when I'm talking about like my history and my connection, And I would often write, comments, additional information under the film site, stories that people maybe didn't know about, back histories of the film sites throughout the Snoqualmie Valley, Falls City, Snoqualmie, North Bend, wherever there was a film site and this gentleman would post something, I would post something really excited. And in my heart, I was coming from a point of view of I was excited because I am so proud to be from this area.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, there was a misunderstanding of something I wrote, is all I can figure. But there was this huge herd of bullies that just pounced on me and just started to attack me.
Yeah.
And they were saying all of these mean things. And this one gentleman said that he was embarrassed of my comments and that I had no authority to talk about these sites. I had no grounding. And I'm like, excuse me? I have no authority to talk about my hometown and like my family is connected to these sites? Like, are you kidding me, dude? I just removed myself from the conversation, but there was this whole pig pile of just negative, rancid, toxic shit.
You know
And
why?
yeah.
Why? Seriously? Because they all share the same brain. It's, as someone has described to me, it's the hive mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll notice that the queen bees do not attack that much.
Yep.
They send their little warrior bees in there to do all the dirty work. And these warrior bees can be friends. It can be their kids. It can be whoever they can manipulate into attacking you. And I know the person you're referring to that said that they were embarrassed by their comment. I'm even embarrassed that this person would even write such a thing, considering that this person has no connection to your area at all. And you being a local, not only so excited about the locations, but wanting to share some history of the locations so that it goes beyond a TV show and it becomes a personal connection for that person. For them to write that says to me that they didn't read your comment. They know what other people of their friends, and I know they're good friends with these people. They know what their good friends have said about you. And so they were attacking you, not your comment, because how dare you come onto their Instagram post and say something nice, because you are ruining their perception of you. They want to think of you as an a-hole. You're coming at them as a nice person. That ruins their belief system and they freak out.
Yep. And so a lot of the names that I remember on this group, the people that were kind of piling on me, I remember those names, which I'm not going to say out loud. We're just going to keep it anonymous,
Hang
like
on,
the show title.
We all know who you are, by the way.
Yeah. But yeah, I recognize some of those names from, yes, the local fan community and the Ronettes Bridge people.
Have you noticed, though, and since you said it, the Ronettes Bridge group, have you noticed that every time there is a problem, every time there is controversy, every time there is some sort of shakeup or blowback in the Twin Peaks fan community, it all has to do with the same 20 or so people, the same names over and over and over again. And they're not just like recent people. These people go back like a decade, since at least 2010 for some of these people. And it's insane how these people kind of, they're sort of like the, not the, what are those, they're the killer bees, or what are those bees that swarm in and like take out they kind of come in and decapitate all the bees, It's like they came in to the Twin Peaks fan community that was pretty harmonious for the most part, and then started whacking everybody to the point where, they took over and basically put the rest of the fan community into submission, because how dare you ever say anything about them?
Yes. And I'm going to call people out even further right now. Okay, here we go. And I'm talking to you. You talk about Black Lives Matter and you think about people of color. You know what? My wife is a person of color and she owns our business. She is a Native American. She is a registered member. And when you talk about you chant Black Lives Matter and you're on the street corner, those are the same people a lot of times that disrespected us. Disrespected us. And shame on you. Shame on you for doing that. Okay? Now you talk about shop local, support local. I'm local as they come. You know, shame on you. Shame on you for disrespecting my family and disrespecting my history and how hurtful that is. So I want to say that, and I just did. And if you have a problem with me, you can come to me face to face, or you can contact me face to face. But I'm not putting up with it anymore. I'm not putting up with this crap. You know,
And
we have a lot to offer. We have a lot to offer, and we have so much support. You know, I don't have to come on here and be with you today, but I felt so passionately about what you're going through. I wanted to. I don't care. I am tired of this crap. Like seriously, make room for other people to shine their light and to give their gift. And don't be a gatekeeper of the culture. Don't be a gatekeeper, an elitist. You're disgusting. You're disgusting.
well,
You know,
they're
share
only
it.
that
Yeah,
way, Bob, because nobody has ever told them to sit down.
yeah,
Now, I do want to say that if they have a problem with you, they should say something to you face to face,
yeah,
because you've relayed an incident that happened a while ago, but it's enough that just you retelling it makes my blood boil. Would you like to tell that incident about when some of these people, when at least one member of the Ronettes Bridge community decided to take it to real life for you?
yes. Um, this was after the pig piling on Instagram. You know, the misunderstanding. You know, and I was like, I can't believe these people are piling on me. Whatever. Blah blah blah.
Hmm.
So I believe I blocked a few people, which is natural. I mean, it was like, yeah, I just don't need these people in my life. I just backed away, I blocked people, you know, that kind of thing. All right, moving on, moving on. It's okay, you know, whatever. They don't want me around. Some people also blocked me. I blocked some. Some people blocked me. Whatever, you know, normal shit.
That's all they know how to do.
Okay, so you know, whatever.
They talk crap behind people's backs on secret
Yeah,
pages or in their private messages. But if you say, "Okay, well, I'm right here," you know, say what you got to say, they go
yeah.
running like the cowards that they are.
Okay, so my son, who is a hardworking guy, I have two sons. I was a single father for many, many years. Okay. I raised kids by myself, 100% custody for 12 years before my wife came along. And we went through a lot of things. But my kids graduated high school and they are contributing members of society and they are hardworking young men. And so my one son, he works in Issaquah, and he said he was approached by a stranger. This was shortly after the Instagram thing, someone he did not recognize. I go, well, who was the guy? Did he give a name? And he's like, no, I don't know who this person was. He walked up to me at my job and he said, are you Bob's son? I recognize you from online. And the guy kind of revealed the fact that he had, I guess, stalked him. I mean, I know that's really weird, but like, that's creepy shit. Like, you have a guy that you've never met before walk up to you saying, are you Bob's son? And he's like, yeah, how do you know that? And he said, well, I saw you online. It's like, well, that means that this guy had been looking at photos and stalking him, you know? And so he found him in his job. This is a town that's 15 miles away, by the way, Issaquah, from North Bend. And he proceeded to tell my son that I was losing my mind and that I was harassing people. And I'm like, losing my mind and harassing people? I'm not harassing people. I was sharing my history, and damn right I want my wife to be honored, and damn right I want to be honored. And you know, whatever the disagreement was, it wasn't to the point where anybody was threatening anybody's lives. I mean, I wasn't harassing anybody. And so he said, oh, I have screenshots.
Mhm.
According to my son, he said he had screenshots on his phone, proof that I was crazy. I was a fucking crazy lunatic. I'm thinking,
Mhm.
okay, a crazy lunatic coming to my son's work, a fucking stranger. Who's the goddamn lunatic here? Okay. Who's the crazy motherfucker? You are, motherfucker. Okay. So anyway, so then he says he has these conversations on the phone. And my son just said, you know what? My dad wouldn't do that. I don't believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you please go away? Can you please get the fuck out of my face? He didn't say get the fuck out of my face. I'm saying that. Anyway. But yeah, he just told him to go away. He said he didn't believe him. I still don't know the identity of this person. All I
Hang on.
know is that
I know who you are. Go ahead.
oh, okay. I still don't know who the person is. I honestly don't. So I have no name. I have no idea. All I know is I believe my son. He's a hardworking young man. He is an honest, straightforward, awesome dude. He is compassionate to so many people. Wonderful person. For you to come up to my son is so childish and insane. And it basically, let's talk about cults. Are you ready?
Hang on a second.
I'm so ready to transition.
Okay, just hang on one second. Hang on. So, in case you were just kind of having this on and moving through the house, and let me just again restate how insane this is.
Yeah.
So, a member from the elite private group Ronette's Bridge, for whatever reason, it has to be a local from that area, knew Bob well enough that he was able to track Bob, find his family, and then find out where his son worked, went to his work and told Bob's son that he's got all the screenshots, that he's a harasser,
Yeah.
that they, all this stuff. This is the familiar playbook these lunatics employ because they have nothing. They have just only hive mentality and scare tactics. They are losers. They are complete imbeciles. And for them to do that to your son shows that they are unhinged.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that one of the leaders of this group, instead of fighting her own battles, sent her children to troll me and attack me last week, says everything I need to know. Because when you have to send your kids to troll me, you've lost any moral high ground. You're a fool. And everybody knows it. And you just need to close up shop and go away because no one's going to tolerate your BS anymore. All right, let's get to what you want to talk about in terms of cults.
Okay. So the behavior that I perceived is very cult-like. Okay.
Absolutely.
And I know cults because I have a friend who was in the Plymouth Brethren, which is a religious cult. We've had conversations with folks that were in cults in the 70s, Christian hippie sex cults and crazy shit. So we are familiar with cults, okay? And so whenever someone feels intimidated by a small group and they have to have 100% allegiance to, I want people to disagree with me. I want to have this conversation. I want to have diversity of opinion. I don't want people to absolutely side with me. I encourage debate. I think freedom of speech is so important. But when a small group, an elite group, has this sort of indoctrination where they don't allow people to think for themselves, and they also have they create threats. So if someone thinks differently, they will threaten their. Now I know this group is not threatening like necessarily physically, as far as I know. I know that's not the case, but as far as like professionally, I do know that there's evidence of professional hits. So like, smearing someone's professional future, smearing, their work, not allowing them to be heard or seen or canceling them.
To be perfectly honest, Bob.
Yeah.
This group is so lucky that a number of us have not sued them to oblivion. And a lot of them deserve it, to be honest. And, if they continue in this manner, it might be something to look at. But they are incredibly lucky they have not been sued yet because of the amount of damage they have done to a lot of people in the fan community.
Yep.
And that's another reason why we're discussing this right now. Yeah, there seems to be a loyalty test almost in a way. It's like
Mhm.
everyone, you got to prove your worth by how many burner accounts you can create and attack from this side or that side,
Yep.
or they'll start liking comments that have nothing to do with them as a way of letting you know they're monitoring your page. It's basically like psychological warfare.
Yeah.
And the fact that a number of them write for the Blue Rose magazine, have contributed to some of Scott Ryan's books. These are not just like fly by night random trolls in any fan community. These are people who have allegiance
Yeah.
to built to them by a lot of people in the fan community, and frankly, a lot of those people have no idea what these people are truly like behind closed doors. They only reveal themselves to about 20 of their friends, and then the thing is that everybody else they've ever attacked doesn't have my platform. So
Yeah.
everybody else just kind of freaks out, freezes, because, oh my god, what is happening? This is insane. And it forces them to kind of move away from that experience, because who wants to be bombarded by these people 24 hours a day? But what that does in return is it empowers them to keep going and do this to somebody else. And then when you have somebody like me, it's just like, enough is enough, and I'm going to put an end to this, and I'm going to at least expose this so other people are aware of this. They freak out. But I gave them the opportunity. I gave them the opportunity to come
Sure.
on my show and air their grievances and talk about whatever they wanted to talk about. They chose not to. They decided to just troll me with a variety of their friends or their kids, and completely embarrass themselves 110%.
Mhm.
And listen, I knew these people were sad and pathetic and complete fools. I had no idea the depths of insanity that they would go to. They're
Yeah.
posting on their Instagram that they're watching my videos with their kids. Who does that but insane people?
Yeah. Yeah. And and like I said, not everybody in the group, and I want to come back to this, is a bad apple, because there are some really great people. Now, if I go on my social media here after this interview and I notice that, like, you know 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 people have removed me from, like, it's really no loss for me, because we continue on with what we do. We're independent of Twin Peaks. My wife and I, we do our own thing. We are totally independent of Twin Peaks. But for you, my friend, I wanted to come on here and show you support, and I wanted to show you that, this for me is kind of a healing session for you. I want you to heal. I want you to feel that you have a friend, and I'm your friend in this, and I verify what you've gone through, and I validate it. And that's my purpose for coming on here. I could give a shit less if some of these Twin Peaks people, it's no loss for me if people, like, defriend me or whatever. And I do have respect for some of the historians. Like, there's some really bright people, and I think it's awesome. And I think it's wonderful. What I do have a problem with is there's this small little group that they create this trickle down effect of negative, toxic, almost like bitchy, like what we call, it was like the movie Heathers, like
Yeah.
all these ladies that are like childish, like high school fucking behavior. It's like, that's the shit. I
But
don't
the
want
thing,
that. I don't want that at a festival. I
but
want
what's
mature adults,
but
dude.
what's hilarious,
Yeah,
Bob, is these
yeah,
people are in their late 30s, 40s,
yeah.
and they're running around like they're 12-year-olds, because
Hmm.
the tactics they're doing are
Yeah,
sixth grade, junior high
it is.
BS,
It
and
is.
it's
You know
it's
what?
almost like I wanna it's almost like I feel like I'm gonna get a MASH note at some point, like,
Sure.
how many times can Ron S. Bridge be an a-hole? I don't know, number 3. Um, it's just, and like I said, it's not everybody. That's why I said it's
No.
about 20 people, or, it's around 20 people. More or less, it's like 8 to 10. I just give it that extra 10 because they have little worker bees that do little things. So it's about 20 altogether. Um, so it's but the thing is though is that they've been identified.
Okay.
All these people have been identified. Every single one of you guys have been cross-referenced with you have no idea the you guys think you guys are connected in terms of because if when it's basically like an attack on one is an attack on all of them, right? So they all come
Yep.
swarming in and attacking you. Believe me, there's a lot more of us than there are of you, and we're all aware of each and every one of you. And so I hope you're happy with the choices you've made.
Yep.
You guys are well known for your behavior,
Hmm.
and you know,
Really, at the end of the day,
it is what it is.
really at the end of the day, my friend, is if, and I'm just going to say this, okay? If I was the mayor of this town or Snoqualmie, I would promote things like the North Bend Film Festival. I would bring back that diverse uh, collection to come back into my hometown for the benefit of my community, the youth here, to be exposed to things that they've never heard about, education, meeting people from all over the world, giving them opportunity. I would also invite people like yourself to be on a panel. And I would make the Twin Peaks Festival, if I was mayor, I would make the Twin Peaks Festival affordable for all ages and families from everywhere. I wouldn't make it this elite thing. I would make it affordable. I would make the tickets, $20 or less or something like that.
Well, I
And
think
I'd find the funding. What's
a
that?
lot of the individual events were
Yeah, I
affordable,
would keep it. In other words, I'd keep it there. I
right?
wouldn't have the $300 tickets or the $1,000
Well,
tickets.
the $300 tickets were a joke. I mean,
Yeah.
the first day, the first official event didn't start till 5 o'clock. You were supposed to, or 3 o'clock, whatever, at Tweets. It was like you showed up for $300. You got to show up and then just go roam the area looking
Yep.
for landmarks on your own time, on your own dime, in your own car. I'm sorry, like I could do that for free. Why am I paying $300 for that?
Right. And then if I was mayor, I would also make it more affordable to come here because like I was talking about housing, they talk about affordable housing. Man, I hear from fans that drive, all the way across the United States to come here and they have to save for 5 years just to come here just for a couple days, and I feel really sad and really because it's so expensive here. And I would just if I would just make more opportunity for more people and I would truly embrace the people, the down and out. I would truly embrace and create true affordable housing or temporary housing. We don't have enough hotels here. We don't have enough lodging for people, but there's so many restrictions. I know they're kind of working on that right now. But I just want to say, if I was ever in charge, you would be on the panel. And if you were ever doing another project in the future, I would help you and I would help you because I know it was so painful. Just going to say, we all know by watching your videos how painful it was to have the group just completely turn their back on you and lash out at you. And it was cruel. It was not a nice thing. And you have every right to be hurt. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that you're a loser or that this or that. It just means that you're trying to heal and that you're trying to come to terms with it. And you're calling out some people and you're trying to say, hey, this is not cool. And more power to you. More
Well,
power to you, buddy.
here's the
Yeah.
good news. All
Yeah.
those people all those people that were complaining and saying outrageous things with no factual backup whatsoever are still on the internet complaining about
Hmm.
whatever it is that's bothering them that day. I myself moved on and made my film without them.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
and I just moved on and it was doing my own thing
Hmm.
until a few of them decided to come out of the woodwork when we were both on the Wyndham's Cabin charity event. I hadn't even thought about these people and didn't even know they were thinking negative things until
Hmm.
they decided to come out publicly and say things while we were both on the same panel at that event. So if they
Hmm.
had, not said that, they wouldn't be implicated now. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
they themselves threw themselves onto the fire pit here. I just have to ask you though. So just to bring it
Mhm.
full circle,
Yeah.
when we met and we were talking in tweets and you were telling me about your history and I was telling you a bit about who I am, my project and stuff like that. One of the things that you've relayed to me and was that one of the reasons why you kind of backed off and didn't want to help moving forward was because you, for whatever reason, were under the assumption that I was one of these people. Is that correct? And
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, and I'm probably guilty in this, and I could be corrected on this, but I have come to grow in my understanding. More and more, I'm trying to see all points of view and not lump people into one category, and that's a sign of mature thinking.
sure,
And so I think at the time, yes, I had a really bad attitude about Twin Peaks fans, and I did. I admit it. I will absolutely admit that. And so maybe at that time, I can't remember exactly, but yes, I have the impression that I just thought, oh, here's another one. Here's another one. Oh yeah, I got to deal with this shit all the time. And there had been some negative things that I had experienced. And so unfortunately, yeah, and I apologized
it
to
was
you,
the
and I
wrong
apologize to you again
it was the
for.
wrong moment in time to catch you, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually. We didn't really have any name exchange or anything negative. I just said I wasn't going to work with you or something like that. I think it
Yeah.
was just abrupt.
No,
It was
no,
just
and
abrupt. Yeah,
I just walked away from it, and
yeah,
but for 5 years I kept thinking, "Oh my god, like what did I do wrong?"
I
I thought
know. I'm
because
sorry.
I thought we got along fine,
Yeah,
and so when we ended up being on the same panel together with Wyndham's Cabin, I was like, "Oh my god, there's Bob," you know, and so I just want to say thank you very much for reaching out, and I really
yeah,
appreciate it. And it's nice to know, that there are there is solidarity out there, that that the things that have been thrust upon me throughout my experience in this fan community, I am not alone. There are other people out there. In fact, you've told me, obviously we won't mention names, but you've also mentioned that you've talked with people who said, yeah, I know about this behavior. I've seen this behavior. So
yeah,
this is a known thing.
yeah.
These people are known. A lot of people don't stand up to them because they don't want the harassment being thrown their way, but they are known. And
Hmm.
so when there's people out there of, voicing how they feel, believe me, there are others out there who feel the same because they've done this to others. And anyway, I just want to bring it back to a more positive thing and just
Hmm.
say that you know, life goes on. I'm super happy that you and your wife are doing fantastic. I know that your book is out. Would you like to let people know about your book?
Yeah. So, back in 2019, we put a book out called The Odd Man Up. We published a book, self-published it, and it's just on Amazon Kindle. We are talking about making it in a physical form. Um, it is a collection of folk tales and like everything that we started this conversation with, very similar stories in depth. That's the content. We have folk tales and history and heritage and backstories and connections and synchronicities and moments of surrealism. But all of the material in the book is connected to real life. It's connected to growing up here. It's everyone is connected in this book, and it's nonfiction because it's based on true stories. Some of the stories I had to change names because of certain acts of violence or liabilities. So I guess there are moments of historical fiction where I just change the names, but the story is true and it really did happen. We just couldn't use the real names. Everything from the paranormal, you mentioned Jackrabbit's Palace, serial killers, Bigfoot, Sasquatch.
I wanted to throw that out to you right now. So there's a town, mm, maybe about 40 minutes north of me. Uh, I think is it Scotts Valley? It's somewhere near. It's around Scotts Valley. They actually have like this official Bigfoot store there. Um,
Oh, is
and
it near Bluff Creek? Isn't it near Bluff Creek?
I don't know. But it has been featured on one of those, you know, drive on by kind of places, And then there's another Bigfoot place up by, oh my goodness, what is that town? Think it's a way up north in California. It's where they filmed Toby Hooper's Salem's Lot. But anyway, so there's a lot of Bigfoot things here in
Mhm.
California too. And so it's interesting
Yeah.
that it spans the whole like West Coast almost.
Hmm. Yeah. So our book, The Odd Man Up, is it's still on Amazon Kindle, and Yeah, we had a lot of good reviews in the beginning, and a lot of 5-star reviews. And then we had a couple look like troll accounts. You talk about burner accounts. We
Yeah.
had a couple burner accounts give us poor reviews, and I was like, what's going on here? Suddenly they just kind of showed up, and it was like 2 stars, but no explanation. You know, like when you give a movie a bad review or a restaurant a bad review, but you don't say why. I mean, it kind of makes you scratch your head, because normally when people give a bad review, you're kind of obligated to say, well, this is why I gave it a bad review. If you don't give it a bad review, it's kind of like you can't take that seriously, because they're not giving you the specifics. So there are two reviews of our book on Amazon that were poor, but neither of them had explanation. So and I didn't recognize the people. You know, I was like, interesting. So, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
People have their own opinions. I don't care. Whatever.
No, it's just I gotta tell you, when it comes to Amazon reviews, I typically don't even read any of them, because you're either gonna get the 5-star, like, this is great, or you're gonna get the
Yeah.
1-star, this is terrible. Because anybody who thinks that's okay is not
Yeah.
inclined to write a review,
Yeah.
right? So I wouldn't really worry about all that.
Yeah. Right.
You know, it's if the only way people can attack is by trying to lower your star rating, then I think they need to look in the mirror and reevaluate their own lives.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, um,
Pardon
well,
me.
is there anything you would like to add before we go? Is there any other experiences you had watching a filming of something, or you know, what was your reaction to season 3 when you saw it? Did you like season 3?
Oh, loved it. Loved season 3. Oh my gosh. And I love the ending. You know, a lot of people are upset. They just, oh my God, I can't handle the ending. Oh my God. But I love the ending. Oh, love it. The reason I love it is it's almost like they never came to town. Like the film crew never came to town. So it's very personal to me when I'm watching the very ending of the last episode, and then things have vanished and the timeline has changed, and like, oh, wait a second.
all the
Laura
real
Palmer was never killed,
all
you
the
know, and it's like,
all
yeah,
the
yeah,
street signs are the real street signs, as North Bend Way, and you know, things like that, you know.
yeah. And then it's
Right.
like, wow, this is like for me as a local, I was like, this is like the alternative timeline, as if David Lynch, Mark Frost never came to town. And it kind of gave me this nostalgia that just kind of built up inside of me, like this joyous nostalgia. Like, and other people probably didn't experience it like that, but for me, that's really what I felt, because I just recognized the landmarks and how the town used to be, and it really drove it home for me. And I love the ending. So
Mhm. Yeah, you know, some people have told me they feel like the ending is what fractured the fan community, because they didn't know how to handle it, so they just, like, you know, went crazy and screaming into the night, you know. So
yeah.
yeah, I really like season 3, and I think I mean, I liked it at the time.
Hmm.
And I loved aspects of it at the time. I liked other aspects. There were a few things I wasn't sure about. I think there's probably a few things I'm probably still unsure about, but I have thought it's really interesting that um, as time has gone by, the season has become stronger and stronger.
Hmm.
And I think after the pandemic and all that, right? I mean, it sort of predicts in a way a world in which, you know, chaos and disease and horror is like, you know, and you know, and what it says about the working class, the fact that almost everybody in that season is living in a trailer park home, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's um I think the season, I think everyone when they're expecting, and I did too to an extent, that, like, you know, it was going to be a continuation of the original series. Um, but so much like Fire Walk with Me, it's its own thing. It's a continuation, but it's not trying to redo what came before.
Mhm.
It's just moving the story forward.
Yeah, and I will tell you the famous episode 8, you know, where the mechanic drops the wrench.
Mm.
We watched that filming. We were on site. My son and I watched from across the street, and it's just right down the road. And there's a specific bay. in the old gas station. It used to be called the Spot, and my uncle John used to work there. That was his first job, and he was a mechanic helper. He learned to be a mechanic in the 50s, the 1950s. That's where my uncle John worked. And in that exact same bay where the mechanic drops the wrench, he used to sit in there next to the stove. They had a gas stove in there, and he used to talk to a gentleman who lived up the Middle Fork and lived in a cave and had a pack of dogs. And he was the very first forest ranger assigned by Mr. Roosevelt back in the day. And they called him Cougar Pete. And Cougar Pete would sit around that stove, that oil stove, and they'd burn oil in that and stuff from the car changes and all that. Anyway, and he would tell stories and stories and stories, and he would just tell stories in that exact same bay. It's amazing. And so when they did the scene where the mechanic drops the wrench in that exact same bay, I think my son counted 32 times, 32 takes of just him dropping the wrench and falling down dead, dropping the wrench, falling down dead, 32 times.
Wow.
And it's amazing. And yeah, I love that kind of stuff. The other one I want to go back to is right around the corner is the Mount Side Motel. And I was there, the scene in Fire Walk with Me where, Leland comes around the corner and he looks in room 6 and
right.
Then he says, I chickened out, and he gave the cash to, and then walks away, and then Black Dog runs at night. Well, right. we were there. My friends and I were hanging out that day. And the guy that played Leland Palmer is Ray Wise. That's his name, right? Ray Wise. He was such a nice gentleman. He came out and he was like, hey guys, how you doing? Unfortunately, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, something like that. He's like, you have to go. But he talked to us for like 10 or 15 minutes and was just a sweetheart. And he came out and explained like, hey, we got to leave, we can't be hanging around. But we got to see, some of that be filmed. We got to watch that actual scene, which is like, I was standing there watching that, which is so fucking awesome. I love that.
I still believe that when Ray Wise is walking away and the little boy comes out and jumps, I think that was an add-on by Lynch because, because he believes in mixing things up and that kind of thing. Because when Ray Wise whips his head around, he's like, what the hell? And then he just, goes with it because it's, he's not going to stop the scene. Right.
Yeah.
And it's just really funny because that reaction that Ray Wise gives when the little boy jumps out, it's like, it's so perfect because it's like, it's the actor not acting.
Yeah.
Right. It's just almost like the character realizing the Black Lodge is always around, even if it's not in the Black Lodge.
I love that.
And I think I heard you talk about that scene before, and I was tremendously moved by, because I just love nostalgia myself, and even if it's modern nostalgia, like when I watch The Goonies, right, and it's like all these kids on dirt bikes, I don't see that anymore, right? So it's like it's just nostalgia to me. You were talking about how you and your friends would go over to that motel and get a soda pop from the machine, and how that machine is in the movie. And so it's like, that moment in time is like forever on film.
Oh my God, yes. Oh, it's so cool. So cool. And then during the return, the film crew was all over here. This is another story I'll tell you. It was really, really exciting for me. I was out mowing the lawn, and this little red car comes up, slowly creeping by. And I'm like, oh my God, it's David Lynch and Mark Frost. I recognize him. And they had a little, like an iPad or some kind of device. And they were doing a slow drive-by and recording video of my property, our house here. My grandparent, we live in our
house. Pause.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're telling me David Lynch and Mark Frost were cruising around in a little red car with an iPad?
Yes, and filming. And I think what they were doing was scouting for location.
Right. Let me just give you a little bow down. That is what an amazing vision to have.
Yeah, David Lynch was in the passenger seat and Mark Frost was in the driver's seat. And I waved at him because I recognized him, and I was so excited. And I was holding a lawnmower. Holding a lawnmower.
Right.
And I hadn't started the lawnmower yet. I was just rolling it into place.
Right.
and I waved at them, and I was like, and then they drove off. But I was like, oh my God, our house came this close, maybe, to being to being a film site. And I was like, damn it. They could have
Well, they
like
did.
knocked on our door,
Well, they did go and film across the street at the hotel, right, or the motel.
Yeah, they did. But like it seemed like they were scouting for maybe an additional scene, or they were looking at our property as a possibility for a certain scene, and it was up in the air. It was,
They probably were because, when you look
yeah.
at where they've shot so many of, up in that area, everything's so tight next to each other that it would be very convenient to just
Mhm.
take the film crew and turn it across the road and, film your area.
So a funny thing happened is that my wife had picked out some curtains for our front window,
Mm.
and the curtains happened to be very similar to curtains that were seen at sets during the time in 2015. And there were people that were kind of cruising around, like I guess you'd say stalking the film sites, and about this, and they're with their cameras and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So they saw us put our new curtains in, which was we just wanted some new curtains, right? We put our new curtains in, and we looked out the front window, and I'm like, what the fuck, man? There's a whole bunch of people across the street, and they're taking pictures of our house, right? And this was 2015. They assumed that our house was a film site because of our curtains, and they had seen Lynch, drive by previously, and then in the area, and so so people were trying to get a head start, leak the information. Oh, but we
Oh
weren't
yeah,
a film site. It was so funny.
absolutely. They
Yeah.
couldn't. They couldn't wait to be the first one to
Yeah.
publicly post. They're gonna be at this location at this date.
Yeah.
I remember talking with Catherine Colson before she passed away. I interviewed her and I said, "What is David going to do? I mean, he's never made a film with the smartphone era where people can live stream." And she said, "Well, David's just gonna he's gonna have to figure this out, basically, right?" And I think for a while the production was being very kind and hey, yeah, cool, and please don't film stuff that's not. But there were people filming stuff. Some people were nice and didn't, obviously show it until after maybe that episode aired or that part aired. But where it all came to a head, and you probably remember this well, is where somebody completely live streamed the ending on Twitter. And it was like an hour or two. It was a while. I remember just sitting here and like watching it live while it was
Mhm.
happening. And then by Monday, TMZ had gotten a hold of the footage and was, showing the ending. Now, of course, I
Yeah.
didn't know it was the ending. I just thought it was just a scene. And it was funny because I've gone back and watched old shows where I'm like, hey, I'm going to show you this footage. Don't worry. It's not really a spoiler because, we know Kyle's in the show. We know Cheryl's in the show. We knew they were going to film at the Palmer house. We don't know the context of this. And of course, it ends up being the final scene of the whole thing, right?
Oh,
Um,
man.
and it's, but what's interesting is I've talked with actors that were set to film very shortly after, still up in Washington State, and they were immediately told that their scenes were going to be moved to California, and they're welcome to keep their parts where they're just going to come down and shoot in California instead. So that's how David dealt with it. He closed up shop and said, "To heck with this. We're going indoors. We're going into a controlled environments where, people aren't staying around filming this." And
Yeah.
I've had some people push back, say we were very nice to the crew, and I'm sure a lot of people were, because it's not everybody, right?
Right.
We've tried to maintain this as it's not everybody, but it's a small group. But that small group took away aspects of the show by making them have to change their whole schedule to leave the state early.
Hmm.
And sometimes I think about that. I go, it's not everybody, but that small little group seems to ruin it for a lot of us.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. I've got more little film site activities that I remember
Yeah, go for it.
too, if you want. They're just
Yeah,
fun little slices of life. And I know
yeah,
I know the fans out there will like these stories.
yeah.
So
Let's do it.
during Firewalk with Me, this was interesting. I showed up wearing a beekeeper's hat
Mm-hmm.
with a peacock feather sticking out of my hat. This was in high school.
Are you trying to get a part in the movie?
Maybe I was. I don't know. But I was standing on the corner of Tweeds or Marti,
Uh-huh.
and this was during filming, and I was with my friend Alice. And like I said, I was about 17, 18. Let's see, 1991. I was 17, yeah. And I remember, this is so cool. This is such a great moment that I'll always remember. But I remember staring into the window of Tweeds, and I saw David Lynch, and he looked up at me, and he looked at my friend Alice, and then he stood there motionless for 5 minutes, staring into the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming, I'm just going to assume that he was meditating.
Right.
He was meditating, and he was probably trying to, see the next move, in his process. But I remember standing there still, and he was standing still, and I just kind of honored that, and I stood still, and I was just a kid, I was 17, whatever. I was a huge fan, but I was so excited I could see him, and he looked up at me, but it was like he couldn't see me. He was looking out, and he was just kind of accessing something higher than himself. I think he was meditating.
Mm-hmm.
And that literally was 5 minutes of him staring into the corner at Tweeds, and it was in the summer of 1991. I believe it was 1991.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stuck around. They let me stick around. It was so nice, and I remember the log lady was there. I remember a lot of the crew were there, and they go, "Hey, nice hat." They liked my hat. They thought it was cool. They liked my peacock feather. And some of the crew were like, "Hey, you look great." And they just let me hang out. It was so nice. And then all these fans, these rabid fans in the evening, they started coming around, and they allowed me to come into the inner workings with all the crew and have pizza with, the giggling waitress, the giggling, is it Heidi? I can't remember what her name is.
Right.
Is it Heidi? Okay, Heidi. So I was standing with Heidi, and she allowed me to go inside the rope. Everybody else was outside of the rope, like, "Hey, stay out there, staff and actors and directors only in here." So I was included. That's how cool these people were, just because of my hat and my peacock feather.
Right.
And I had my grandmother's little wind-up clock in my pocket, and I kept pulling it out, and I kept winding it, and I'd hold it up, and then I'd put it in my pocket, and it was like, they totally allowed me to be a strange fucking kid off the street and join the party. And Heidi was like, "Hey, do you want some pizza?" And she offered me, the actress that played Heidi, she offered me some pizza. And I remember the crew was there, and oh my God, it was so cool, And then I remember looking out. This is so funny. You're going to laugh so hard. But I remember looking out beyond the ropes, and I recognized some of the locals. And they're like, "Bob, what are you doing in there? What are you doing in there? Are you part of the movie? Are you part of the movie?" They're shouting over the rope.
Right.
Oh my God, that's so funny. And then I met Bob. I met Frank Silva. Oh
Wow.
my God, that was the coolest thing.
What was that like?
This was amazing. So this was before the fire. We can talk about the fire at Tweeds. There was a fire.
Right.
Before the fire, Bob, or Frank Silva, was in the back room, and he was open to meet people. He just kind of set up shop, and he was selling little buttons that said B.O.B., black and white. Kind of like, beer or soda.
Right.
He just said B.O.B. I went in and bought one of his buttons, the Bob buttons. And I go, "Hey, Bob, I'm Bob." And he stood up, he goes, "Hey, Bob, nice to meet you, Bob." And we shook hands. And I love that memory. Oh my God, so cool.
Yeah, I've heard just across the board, he could have been a nicer guy.
Oh, he was so sweet. What a nice guy. Yep.
Those are some pretty incredible experiences. I mean, I've so you haven't met David Lynch himself?
I did meet him briefly. Yes, I did. And
at the premiere party or during the pizza party?
No, I met David Lynch at during the filming of Fire Walk with Me.
Okay.
Very, very briefly. So the story on that, really quickly, I was really sad about him losing, my friend losing the autograph,
Right.
and I wanted to reconnect somehow. So I had created this beautiful painting. I painted this painting of Mount Si with a tunnel going into the inner mountain with this glowing light, and kind of evoking the feeling of the ancient spirits and the ancient energy of the area with a full moon in the sky. And I was like, dude, I want to give this to David Lynch, right? I just didn't know how to give it to him. I didn't know how to give him the painting,
Right.
but I wanted to give him this gift. I was just a huge fan, and I wanted to give him this gift. So I went to the film site at Olallie State Park, and I knew that they were filming at the little ranger cabin. And in retrospect, this is crazy, but I set up the painting at a certain location, and I put a note to David from Bob. I know it sounds funny and crazy, but I was an artsy little kid. I was just an artsy youth. And so it said to David from Bob. That's all it said. And I put that on the painting, and I strategically put it near the set. And I knew that one of the crew would find it, and it said to David. Oh, to David L. I put specifically to David L. from
Right.
Bob. Very cryptic. I was just having fun with the whole thing. Anyway, so then on the set of Fire Walk with Me, this was at Tweed's Cafe. Hey, David. And he goes, yeah, what? And he turned around, and I said, hey, did you get my painting? And he goes, what? I go, did you get my painting? I gave you a painting. I wanted to make sure you got my painting. And he goes, I'm afraid I don't know anything. I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, oh, I'm sorry to bother you, and then he smiled. He says, all right. And then he walked away. That was my one conversation with David Lynch. So, but honestly, just to have had that exchange is
Right.
pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So there you go.
Absolutely. Did you go during the season 3? Did you go and watch a lot of the filming that was happening?
Yeah, we did. It was right around the neighborhood here, like just down the road. Where the woman with the blood on, and she's crawling out of the bushes, like call
Right.
911. That's just like literally, I can walk there in 3 minutes. The Red Bridge is right over there. There were so many film sites around here, very close proximity.
Well, Nadine's shop is right near where you live too. So.
Oh, right downtown. Yep. Run Silent, Run Drapes. Yep.
That actually caused some controversy because they put up the storefront way before they filmed the scene. So pictures of that were going around the internet. So people were like, oh, I actually thought that was kind of fun because obviously it's a play on that movie title, right? Run Silent, Run Deep. I think that's the name of the submarine movie. But when season 3 was filming, was there just genuine excitement in the air in terms of like it's back? Was it, did you see tourism go up? Did you see what was it a positive experience when they were filming in the area?
Yeah, I would say predominantly positive. Like during Firewalk with Me, like I said, 50-50. By the time they were filming, season 3, I would say 80% of the locals embraced it. Maybe more than that. 90% of the locals
It's
embraced
amazing
it.
what 20 plus years can do to a community.
Yeah, absolutely. It was overwhelmingly positive. Yeah.
Now, since season 3 has come out, I get the vibe that the town, the area up there, is not gonna let it go away again like it did in that 18 years before. It seems like Twin Peaks is now a permanent fixture of your area.
It is. I would definitely say it's a permanent fixture. And my prediction is that the people at Chamber and folks that are in charge are going to, try to milk it and try to increase the ticket prices. Maybe if I'm wrong, great. Hopefully I'm wrong. my gut instinct is that they're going to every year going to be bigger and bigger, and the tickets are going to go up and up, and it's going to be a money grab for this group. That's my prediction.
Well, I mean, they barely had a turnout. I mean, yes, it's the first year. Yes, it wasn't very well advertised. But like I said, when you have it be, an elite, a number of people and just their friends, basically a 3-day meet and greet of run its
Mhm.
bridge up there. It's not really a Twin Peaks event. It's not really a festival of sorts. It's a private party on the streets. So obviously, if they were going to do something else, they definitely need to make it broader and bring in a tremendous amount more people. Whether you get along with these people or not, you have to have the representatives out there. I mean, everybody has a
Mhm.
voice out there. So let's not make it a exclusive event. Let's make it something that generally reflects the community, and not just a certain small group that thinks that
Mhm.
they run the fandom, because they don't.
Exactly. And my wife was pointing out Star Trek fans because she is a Star Trek fan. And she was saying it's not like that with Star Trek. Like she's never had any kind of negative thing. And I know it probably exists. I've never heard of it. But yeah, just
Well,
among Star Trek, no, they don't have the
well,
same deal.
from what I understand from people who've told me, and again, like I'm actually on the peripheral of the fan community because I do these videos. I admin on a couple of pages, but I don't go much further than that. I don't frequent other people's
Mhm.
pages. I don't, so I kind of keep to my own thing. And so for me to see this stuff happening, for me to have this happen to myself, means that it's it's more widespread than even people seem to acknowledge. Um,
Yeah.
so I think what it is Twin Peaks is such a niche show. Yes, there are a tremendous amount of fans out there, but there's only a certain amount that like do things publicly.
Mhm.
Um, so there is sort of this hierarchy. There is sort of this, but from what again from people who've told me, this is a relatively new thing. Just in the last 10 years, that this has happened, where basically people just kind of decide to move in and take it over, and they have a group of friends that's going to back them all up, and so they all just kind of watch each other's backs and attack when they feel the need to, because for whatever they feel threatened, in whatever way. And it's just a real shame because it doesn't have to be that way, and yet
No.
and yet it is, and it's not going to be that way for much longer, because
No.
as these people continue to be exposed and called out, they're gonna go away eventually because their little fun is over.
Yeah, for me, this will be the last time I maybe it's the first and last time I talk about this publicly because I just enjoy what I do. I like storytelling and I like the joy that we create, the education, and so yeah, this is just going to be the last time. And if there's any other conversations about it, they'll be private. They'll be if someone has a problem, they're going to come directly to my email or my phone, or they're going to come face to face with me, and that's how we're going to talk about it. This will be my last time that I talk about it openly and publicly because we've just set the record straight and that's it. That's all I wanted to do today. We just set the record straight, show you some support, and just say, hey, think independently. If you're in this group, fix your heart or die. Fix your fucking heart or die.
and
Because
don't and and
yeah,
don't, and don't
take
troll
your own
Bob,
advice.
and don't
Yeah.
troll Bob's son at his work. Like that's just
Yeah, there you go.
like
Yeah, I mean, people, free yourself. Think for yourself. David Lynch would approve of these messages. It's okay to disagree with somebody else. It's okay to have diversity, and it's okay for everybody to have a chance to be heard. It's okay for people to showcase their talent and rotate people in and out. It doesn't have to be the same people. We live in this beautiful, big, rich world with all these different things, and we need to celebrate everything. We don't need to just focus on one little special little group. It's
right
pathetic and
where
it's a
their
dead end. It's
where
a dead
their
end.
where their grievances end up overshadowing the whole reason why we're here, is because we're fans of these artists and their work, right?
Right.
I want to just end it on this image that I was thinking about, because you were talking about looking inside tweeds and seeing David Lynch, and you
Mhm.
presume that he was meditating. So I've been told that during season 3, when they were up there, that he was staying at the Salish. But one of the things that I loved hearing, I've heard this from a few people, is that, I don't know, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and no one bugged him, but he would walk out of his room at Salish and go around, which you can follow the pathway around to one of the landings. And I guess around, I don't know, between 4:30 and 6 a.m. He would just sit out there and meditate every morning before each day of filming. And the idea of this artist in his late 60s meditating, looking over the
Mhm.
Snoqualmie Falls, which is, we've talked about the power of the locations. You truly, I mean, I don't care if you've been in Niagara Falls or not. Snoqualmie Falls is a whole other thing. Like you feel this power when you're there, and it's not just
Oh
the
my God.
power, just because it's powering half the town. I mean,
Yeah.
it's literally like the power of this fall, and different times of the year have different, different levels of the falls. But talk about getting charged up for the day. I don't see how Lynch isn't out there, 30 minutes a day meditating, feeling hearing the roar of the falls, um, and just not feel like you are totally part of the earth for that day. So
Yeah.
I can see why every day he would do that, because I don't know. I love this image of just David Lynch out there by himself before anybody else out, because it's a very quiet area too. We talk
Mhm.
about a lot of people out there, but there's still times of the day where you can be out there. Because my favorite time ever is to go at nighttime to the falls at night, and see the lights and the spotlights on the falls and the lights of the hotel, because
Oh
it
yeah.
really truly feels like you're at the Great Northern at nighttime.
Oh yeah.
You see like the little flies in the air and stuff. I love it so much. My
Yeah.
favorite thing. If you ever want to like stalk me and kill me and throw me over the falls, I'll be there. I'm usually there by myself, so you can just like hoist me up and throw me over. Um, anyway, but I don't know. Sometimes I just think about, as dark, as disturbing as aspects of Twin Peaks is, there's such a beauty, such a richness, such a,
Mhm.
you talk about your area. I think that Twin Peaks, uh, and the way David Lynch and Mark Frost and everybody else that collaborate with them, I think that show ultimately honors your entire area. And while,
Mhm.
it's brought some negative aspects in terms of commercialization, but that comes along with a lot of things. But
Sure.
it does feel very honorable to your area. And
Yeah.
so I think that's one of the reasons, like if they came up there and just kind of made fun of your area, I don't think you would like the show very much, just because it was filmed there. I think I think you
Yep.
feel that like the show actually
Yeah.
is honoring and is respectful of everybody that has lived up there.
100%. Yep. And for a lot of us who grew up here, it's a time capsule. And I've talked to other folks that they say, "Oh, I love watching Twin Peaks because it brings me back. The footage brings me back to my childhood." And a lot of these things are changing, and you see it all over town. Old buildings are being torn down. Like landscape is changing. The demographics. It's just not going to be the same town that it was in 1989 or 1991. Or even 2015. It's not even the same town anymore from that. That's pretty
Right.
sad. That's pretty sad. So, yeah.
But it's still a beautiful area,
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah.
and I'll still always want to come up there and visit. Um, so, I mean, yeah, I mean, the moment they changed the road that
Mhm.
that Cooper drives past the sign, I was like, things are changing if they're redoing the roads where it doesn't even look like the same road anymore.
That's so true. Yep.
But you gotta move with the times. Sometimes erosion is a thing, and you got you gotta do something about it, right? So, um, but Bob, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, that you coming on here, and I appreciate all
Mhm.
your kind messages, and it's really meant a lot. Um, that not only you reached out and said what you said, but reconnecting with you has been a real pleasure, and uh, I'm glad, if anything, that this has allowed people like us to meet back up and see that the owls are truly not what they seem.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate and thank you from the bottom of my heart, including me today on your show, giving this platform, and so I can speak freely and just tell my point of view. It really means a lot to me as well. Thank you so much.
Of course, where can people find you on the internet if they want to say nice or terrible things to you? So-
Okay, well, On Instagram, I'm Bob Antone. And on Facebook, I'm Bob Antone.
Oh, there it
And then
is.
I also have a band called Tinkham Road, and you can find Tinkham Road on Facebook. We have a Facebook page.
What kind of music is it?
Yeah, so we have a lot of jazz musicians in our band, but we also have a lot of traditional um, musicians, meaning like bluegrass, country, folk, that kind of thing, Americana. We tend to make music that is connected to the landscape. So we do songs that are either historical, Northwest or Seattle area songs written here in the last 150 years. We actually perform them, rare songs like Oregon Trail, things that came here years ago. Or we write new songs about the history of the land. It's very much regional history music. And also there is a Twin Peaks vibe. So there are songs that we have a song called Red Door, Come On Through. And it's about, the Red Door in season 3. We have another song called All We Are Is Coffee and Donuts to You. And that's about the experience of just being a local but also a fan. All we are is coffee and donuts to you. And then we have another song, Douglas Fir. We have a song Douglas Fir. So there are themes that are cultural references to Twin Peaks, but also just in general, the beauty of the Great Northwest. It's almost like film soundtrack. Like you think about a movie, and whatever story we're telling, we create the music for that story.
Sounds great. And everyone
Yeah.
check out their Facebook page. And as for us, you know how to get a hold of us: Patreon, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email us anytime. Bob, once again, a real pleasure. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Give this video a big thumbs up if you haven't already. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already as well. And we will see you soon. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.